Hello everyone and welcome to this new series that I'm starting today with brand positioning of designer fragrance houses and how they can dominate the industry, as in be the best designer fragrance house, but also compete with niche fragrances in terms of creativity and ingredients. I think YSL is set out to do that, so that's why I decided to go with YSL first. And this video will essentially entail what I would do if I were the creative director of YSL, whether I'd discontinue some fragrances, bring some of them back, a few reformulations definitely, and some missed opportunities that YSL did not take that I would have loved for them to. This is essentially a video on how YSL could dominate the fragrance industry. So without further ado, let's get into it. So firstly, we need to clean up the YSL discography. We've got quite a few fragrances that are just not doing anything for the brand. They are all listed on the right of the screen. As you can see, they are either outdated like Cinema, or don't smell good like Parisienne, or potentially are just copycat. I would sell all the ones that I've got and then just not reproduce any of these because they are just not doing anything for the brand. But also, we've got a camp of fragrances that we should just leave as is. Some of them are for nostalgia's sake. L'Homme and La Nuit de l'Homme are good. They are, for the sake of nostalgia, should stay, but you should not include any more flankers. I feel like YSL milks flankers just to get as much money as possible. I would just put them in the same tab on the website and leave it as is. The Fabulous Supreme Bouquet is part of the objectively the best YSL line in my opinion. This line that is in the gold bottle is just fantastic. You should not do anything to it. No improvements are required, nothing is needed, just leave it as is. And lastly, we do have a few that tie to the brand heritage and should never be discontinued, like Kuros and Paris. Paris is an ode to Paris, and it's genuinely one of the best fragrances YSL has come up with. I do have a plan for Paris, so I'll discuss that later in the video. So let's get to things I would actually change. The Libre line is setting out to be one of the best designer lines on the market. I think just to make the line smell a little bit more rich, I would increase the jasmine and reduce the orange blossom, purely because jasmine smells more expensive than orange blossom. And I think the releases, again, flankers, are just not very good because you've got the original and the EDT that smell similar, where it's redundant to own both, and you've got the Le Parfum and the Intense that smell similar, where it's redundant to own both. And out of these, I would choose the original and the Le Parfum to keep, and I would get rid of the other two. Saying that, I think you should release two new flankers that are quite different. So one should be more woody. Potentially, you could add patchouli, pepper, and vetiver. That's just an option. I'm not saying add these exact notes, just a more woody version of Libre. And also, I think a quite summery one would add a lot to the collection. Potentially, again, Gardenia Almond and Vanilla, the creamy white floral with the vanilla sets out to be great for summer. I do understand where they are coming from with the campaign of the strong women. I do see it fitting. But if we look at the most girly, trendy aesthetic, is the rich French girl, which absolutely fits this line perfectly. So I think they should lean into that in their marketing campaign. There are some pictures on the right-hand side that potentially show what the campaign could include. Something along those lines would fit this line much more. The current campaign comes across a little bit unattainable, of like walking through fire and businesswomen. Like, I get the point, I just don't think it's the perfect fit. Going back to the theme of the video, dominate the classy girl kind of scent, because this scent is absolutely better than any Chanel fragrance, even though it has that style. Again, we are dominating the blues. Now, Y line is essentially my favorite blue DNA line, and that is because it has a signature. Now, I think the signature of this line is the aldehydes and the sage that has been lost through quite a few flankers. So we will clean this line a little bit by getting rid of the Y Fraîche, the Y Le Parfum, and the Y Live. I just don't think they are doing anything for the brand. The EDP I will keep as is, as the sweet fruity one, which used to be my signature scent for quite some time. And thank God you've reformulated the EDT. Now the EDT current one is fantastic. In terms of the new release, I do actually like it, but I just think you should reformulate it without announcement to include aldehydes, just so that it fits the theme of this line better. As I say, the theme of this line is to include aldehydes and sage in all fragrances. Including aldehydes in this line, in a blue line, was a revolutionary idea in my opinion, because I was surprised that Chanel came up with Bleu de Chanel first, and they are known for aldehydes, but they didn't include it. So YSL told them, you know what, I'm going to show you what you missed out on by including it in mine, and they did it way better than Chanel could ever. So absolutely love this line. I would include a new flanker that is woody instead of the Le Parfum, but is not sweet whatsoever. So again, I just have example notes that could potentially be what you use. It doesn't have to be that, but it's just something to give an idea of what I think the fragrance should smell like. And I did include white florals, which are quite unique for a designer fragrance, especially targeted towards men. But I think it suited this line very well in the Y Live. However, I don't think you should include Y Live because overall Y Live is not woody enough. So you can, I guess, reformulate it, but I would just include a new flanker that is more woody and has white florals in it. And that will absolutely dominate the blue fragrance game because you've got a sweet one, you've got a fresh one, a woody one, and a unique floral element as well. Again, with the YSL campaigns, I don't think this campaign makes any sense. Why is there a guitar in the marketing campaign? It makes zero sense. So to make it make sense, I think instead of changing the campaign, YSL should release a guitar. So they should potentially have a sponsor or a deal with a guitar brand and release the Y guitar model. That should be included in the campaign, and then you would expand your customer base to guitar lovers as well. That is not it for domination. We are still dominating. We are going to dominate the designer woods through this collection. I'm just going to move where I am here because I want you to see this fabulous oud fragrance. So I think this should kind of set out to be the basis for any fragrance. This line, if you don't know, it has 3 fragrances currently. It has a sandalwood scent, a leather one, and also a oud iris fragrance. I don't like the leather and I don't like the oud iris. I think they are doing nothing for the brand because they are not original and not good whatsoever. The sandalwood, however, is my favorite YSL fragrance at the moment, and it is my current signature scent. It is fantastic. Absolutely recommend it to anyone. I would keep the sandalwood. I would move the M7 Oud Absolute into this line and put it in the same bottle as the oud fragrance. And I also think you should add a vetiver scent, and so that would be the new release of this line. It should be something along the lines of a niche version of La Nuit de l'Homme without the lavender. The cardamom vetiver combination worked out really well, so I think you should do that here, but to make it more niche with, again, example notes that I think you could potentially use. You don't have to use the exact ones, but including notes, just make sure you actually understand what I mean. And I think you should bring 2 fragrances back to this line. So Cuir is a leather scent that is absolutely fantastic. It was one of my favorite releases, but they've discontinued it very fast, and I wasn't really sure why. Every single person who has smelled this and I've spoken to absolutely loves it. So I'm not sure why they discontinued this scent. I would put it back in this line instead of the leather that was in this line. And also, I think Belle Opium was such a great flanker. It was one of the best standard line fragrances, in my opinion. But I think if you are putting it in this line, you should potentially make it more unisex as opposed to feminine leaning. So I would just remove the fruits, especially that fruit notes usually just cheapen the fragrances. So I would just remove the fruits of the Belle Opium. Now, those notes are not just from my head. I've literally looked at the listed notes for Belle Opium and removed the fruits. So it's the same scent, just without the fruits. Well, technically, it's not the same scent. It's a lot better. But yes, that will potentially round off the woods collection. You would have a sandalwood, an oud, a vetiver, a leather, and a potentially tobacco incense. Continuing on the theme of domination, we are moving on to the vanillas. So, in terms of Black Opium, I actually really like the scent. And I think the YSL team knows that this DNA is really good. So, whenever they come up with a unique twist on this line, they release it in one of their more expensive lines to get more money for it, which I think is I mean, I get why they are doing it, but I wouldn't necessarily do that. I'm actually going to suggest something that might be a little bit controversial. So I would announce that you are discontinuing this line. I wouldn't necessarily announce it formally, but I would make sure that some rumors are going around of the Black Opium line being discontinued, and that is just to make sure people are going to run away and buy the stock that you've got, and then you'd reintroduce the line. And I think you should reintroduce it in a celebrity party. So if you don't know, YSL has grind coffee that is kind of part of the Black Opium line, but you can't just buy the coffee, you have to buy the scent, and you will receive information on how you can get the coffee, which is great. So I think that should be the reintroduction of this line. In regards to flankers, I think all the flankers other than the original should potentially be actually discontinued. You should keep the original and then include 3 new ones that are quite distinct. So firstly, you should include an oud vanilla. I would say that should potentially be something along the lines of wild leather. So wild leather is one of the exclusives of the YSL discography, and it's a great scent. It could have easily been in this line, so I would just make it slightly more feminine and release it in this line. You should have a green vanilla because we don't have good green vanillas in the designer world. I mean, we have Aura and Decadence, but they're not very good. So you will do it well and you'll release it in this line. And also a salty vanilla that is non-existent in the designer world, which I think will be a fabulous hit. On the theme of YSL releasing Black Opium flankers in other lines, I think Baby Cat absolutely is related to this line. Baby Cat was a fantastic release, but I think it could have worked so much better in this line than in the exclusives. Again, I do get why they released it there. Actually, since we're talking about them, let's move on to the exclusives of the signature line. Now, this line is signature fragrances that you should be known for, and unlike Baby Cat, the other new release that was in the purple bottle was just absolutely not good, so I would just discontinue that fragrance because it's not unique, it's not adding anything to the line. It's a fruity, rose, tangy scent, copying a very popular scent I'm not going to mention. But yes, I just think is not good enough and cannot compete with the others in the signature line. Now, in terms of Trench, I do like Trench, but I think the Tangerine and Fig are just making it so cheap and sticky. And just because you've used Tangerine in one fragrance before, you should not just push it in every fragrance you could. So I'll just remove Tangerine and Fig and replace them with something. I suggested Pepper and Jasmine. It doesn't have to be that. Just something that is more expensive smelling than Tangerine and Fig. Also, we've got Grain de Poudre, which is my favorite of this line, if it didn't have the coriander. So coriander, I don't know why fragrance brands are using in any fragrance really. It gives off that green, sweaty, dirty smell that is not good and should not be included in any fragrance. So I would genuinely just remove that and it would be perfect. Also, you might be aware of Ivresse, which used to be called Champagne. So this should potentially be included with a campaign with Anya Taylor-Joy. It doesn't have to be with her. I just suggested her because I think she does fit the aesthetic of this scent. And I definitely think you should include a campaign for one of the signature fragrances. It just brings more attention to the line instead of just counting on Demi Rolling talking about Tuxedo and Baby Cat. So yes, that's definitely good. Love the packaging of the signature line. I would just remove the candles. YSL candles are not unique whatsoever. They just look like any other candle. I do have a slide on candles, so hold your horses. But I just think every candle should be discontinued. I mean, they only have 2 on their website, so not discontinuing much. And lastly, I think you should release a new fragrance that is the trend of the year. Again, a suggestion, it doesn't have to be that. I think you should release a fragrance note that is not used in perfumery that much. So I suggested kind of like a pineapple oud could potentially fit this line very well in times for summer, because I definitely think YSL is a great trendsetter. They were the ones who started with the sage in the Y line, and now every fragrance includes sage because of the Y line. I think YSL should continue the trends and release fragrance accords that are not used very often. I'm glad that YSL did not follow the train and release a cherry fragrance. I definitely think it's not a good look because it just looks like you are copying, and YSL is great with releasing their own new creations. So I think they should continue with that. And lastly, we've got a few potential new additions that I think YSL should do. one of which is the candles. So on the right, I've got like a picture of a sculpture candle, and I think YSL should do something similar, not exactly what I'm showing on screen, because someone is doing that and that would be copying once again. I just think it should be potentially like a bouquet of roses, or one of their fragrance bottle designs should be turned into the candle. Potentially it could be shoes or bags that are turned into candles. I think that would be a great idea, and it would set them apart from any other designer house, or potentially niche ones as well. It would be great if they can find something that potentially related to the history of the brand. That is even better. And also I think they should create a quiz. So every fragrance house that creates a quiz stands out so much more, and it shouldn't be generic. It shouldn't be like, do you want to smell like vanilla? Do you want to smell like woods? No, it should be, do you want to smell like a rich French girl? Do you want to smell like a contemporary man? That kind of thing. I'm surprised YSL doesn't do this, but you should offer customizations on the bottles, like engravings. YSL doesn't offer that, and I'm surprised they don't. You can charge for it, it gives you more money, and it's not that hard to do. And also, I think you should have an in-house perfumer that is exclusive to YSL, and that would increase the caliber of YSL in terms of perfumery. It would be seen as a more exclusive house that is not so attainable. Instead of having a campaign that's not attainable, have a perfumer that is not attainable, and that will make your fragrances smell the part. And lastly, I was surprised they didn't do anything special for Valentine's Day other than release the flanker of Y. So I would potentially done a Valentine's Day campaign as the new ode to Paris. You could potentially release a flanker of Paris. That is what Mon Paris should have been, because Mon Paris, the idea behind it is the new Paris, but it does not smell good. It just smells like hairspray. I don't think you should include that scent. You can market it as a Parisian chic aesthetic, which fits the brand, but also if you just are looking for money, essentially, you could have easily just done like a flanker with this, with Paris Hilton in a Y2K fashion, since that's popular. That would just pop off. Everyone would listen to it, I'm sure. Now, you might be wondering, who are you to tell YSL what they should do with their brand? It is their brand, and your ideas are not very good. Well, I own Crimson Copy, which is a company for copywriting, brand positioning, and marketing exclusively for fragrance brands. And I started this company purely because I think fragrance brands have so much work to do and they are choosing not to do it. They are just counting on influencers mentioning their fragrances and getting them sales, when they could do a lot more either in their releases or in their copywriting. This video was focusing on brand positioning and marketing, but I've got other videos on the channel that are focusing more on copywriting, which I think you should watch. If you want me to have a look at your own brand, then you can go to the description and book a meeting with me, and then we'll discuss your brand in more details. Thank you for listening. See you later.